For the first time in centuries, researchers have uncovered what's believed to be Jesus' tomb inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
There are places on this earth so layered with history, so saturated with meaning, that even standing above them feels like standing at the edge of something vast and unknowable. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem's Old City is one such place. Pilgrims have walked through its ancient doors for 17 centuries. Emperors have built upon it. Conquerors have tried to destroy it. And for all that time, the ground beneath it has kept its secrets sealed in silence, in stone, in soil, in seeds that no one alive has seen. Until now. In a series of discoveries that have quietly shaken both the scientific and religious worlds, archaeologists have uncovered something extraordinary beneath the foundations of one of Christianity's most sacred sites. Not a legend. Not a theory. Physical evidence. A 2,000-year-old garden. Ancient tombs carved from bedrock. A limestone burial surface that hasn't been seen by human eyes in over 5 centuries. And organic material, olive pits, grape seeds, ancient pollen, that appears to place a living, breathing landscape exactly where the Gospel of John said it would be. What scientists have found beneath Jesus' tomb is not just archaeological. It is, for many, nothing less than a window cut through time itself. Stay with us, because what lies beneath the surface of this story is unlike anything you have heard before. To understand why the recent discoveries matter so deeply, we need to go back to October 2016, a night that left even seasoned scientists visibly shaken. Engineers had already identified a crisis. The edicule, the small centuries-old shrine that surrounds the traditional tomb of Jesus Christ inside the church, was structurally failing. Humidity, candle smoke, and time had taken their toll. A restoration was essential. And with that restoration came an opportunity that archaeologists had been requesting for 60 years. The chance to examine what lay beneath the marble cladding that had covered the burial site since at least 1555 AD. A team from the National Technical University of Athens was granted permission. Working around the clock, they carefully lifted the marble slab that had sealed the interior of the tomb for generations. What they initially found beneath it was anticlimactic, a layer of ordinary fill material. Rubble. Dirt. Nothing dramatic. Some members of the team began to wonder if the centuries of destruction and rebuilding had erased whatever original features might once have existed. But they kept going. After 60 straight hours of painstaking work, they reached something no one expected to find intact. Researchers confirmed the existence of the original limestone cave walls within the 19th century edicule, or shrine, which encloses the tomb. A window was cut into the southern interior wall of the shrine to expose one of the cave walls. And beneath the fill, beneath a second broken marble slab etched with a faint cross, they reached the original limestone burial bed. It was intact. After decades of scholars questioning whether anything original had survived the church's many destructions and rebuildings, here it was, the ancient stone surface that Christian tradition holds as the resting place of Jesus Christ, still present, still there, as if time itself had chosen to preserve it. Frederick Hebert, National Geographic's archaeologist in residence, was present at that moment. "I'm absolutely amazed. My knees are shaking a little bit because I wasn't expecting this," he said. "We can't say 100%, but it appears to be visible proof that the location of the tomb has not shifted through time, something that scientists and historians have wondered for decades." That is not a statement made lightly. Hebert is a professional who has spent his career in some of the world's most significant burial sites. Yet it was this tomb, in this ancient church in Jerusalem, that he described as more important than anything he had ever worked on before. Professor Antonia Morapula, who served as chief scientific supervisor for the Conservation and Restoration Project, stood before the exposed rock and said, "This is the holy rock that has been revered for centuries, but only now can actually be seen." And as if that were not enough, science went further still. Mortar sampled from between the original limestone surface of the tomb and the marble slab that covers it was dated to around AD 345, placing it squarely within the era of Emperor Constantine, who sent a delegation to Jerusalem to identify and honor the tomb of Christ. This was not tradition alone. This was measurable, datable, physical confirmation that the site had been recognized and venerated at a remarkably early point in Christian history. The burial surface was eventually resealed beneath its marble covering, possibly not to be seen again for centuries. But the images and data captured in those precious hours of exposure continue to rewrite what we know about this sacred place. The 2016 revelations were extraordinary. But they were, it turns out, only the beginning. In 2022, a new and entirely separate investigation began, not inside the edicule, but beneath the wider floor of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre itself. The current archaeological project stems from urgent conservation work launched in 2016, when engineers detected alarming signs of structural degradation in both the edicule and the church as a whole, including the flooring, plumbing, and ventilation systems. With the necessary permissions finally secured from all three major Christian communities overseeing the church, the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate, the Franciscan Custody of the Holy Land, and the Armenian Patriarchate, as well as a license from the Israel Antiquities Authority, excavations could begin in earnest. The project is led by Professor Francesca Romana Stasala of Sapienza University of Rome, coordinated by the three main Christian communities in collaboration with the Antiquities Authority. Stasala is not only a professor of archaeology, but also a member of the Pontifical Roman Academy of Archaeology, a distinction that reflects the weight and seriousness of the work she was entrusted to carry out. Working in small sections, carefully and slowly, Stasala's team began to peel back the floor of one of the most visited buildings on Earth. And what they found, layer by layer, exceeded every expectation. Archaeologists discovered that the site once functioned as an active quarry in the Iron Age, used for cutting limestone. As quarrying ceased, the area was gradually filled in and converted into an agricultural garden, with olive trees and grapevines, a transformation confirmed by archaeobotanical evidence, including ancient olive pits, grape seeds, pollen, and animal bones. Read that again. A garden. Hidden beneath the floor of the church, preserved in the soil for 2,000 years, waiting to be found. The excavation uncovered low stone walls and filled in soil, suggesting deliberate efforts to turn the former quarry into a cultivated area. This was not a wild patch of land that happened to grow plants. It was intentionally landscaped, deliberately maintained. Someone tended this garden. Someone planted it. Someone walked among its olive trees and grapevines in the 1st century of the Common Era, possibly not far from a tomb carved into the rock just a short distance away. Professor Stasala described the evidence. The pollen and seeds date to the period in between the use of the quarry and the Roman age, when the area had a funerary use. She added, the quarry had to be gradually abandoned, and as the stone extraction ended it was used for agricultural areas and tombs. This must have been what it looked like in the 1st century AD. In other words, the landscape of this site in the time of Jesus was not bare rock or open waste ground. It was green. It was cultivated. It was, in every sense of the word, a garden. And when Stasala was asked about the significance of this finding in light of the biblical texts, she did not hesitate. The archaeobotanical findings have been especially interesting for us, in light of what is mentioned in the Gospel of John, whose information is considered written or collected by someone familiar with Jerusalem at the time. The Gospel mentions a green area between the Calvary and the tomb, and we identified these cultivated fields. Those cultivated fields, those olive pits and grape seeds, those layers of soil that somehow survived beneath marble and centuries of footsteps, they have made the Gospel of John's single quiet verse feel suddenly, astonishingly real. There is a verse in the Gospel of John that has puzzled scholars for centuries. It is brief, almost casual in its delivery. In chapter 19, verse 41, John writes, "Now in the place where he was crucified there was a garden, and in the garden a new tomb in which no one had yet been laid." For generations, critics of the biblical text pointed to that garden as evidence of embellishment. Crucifixion sites were brutal places, rocky, exposed, associated with violence and public death. The idea of a garden nearby seemed, to many modern readers, too poetic, too symbolic. Perhaps John was speaking metaphorically. Perhaps the garden represented paradise, renewal, the hope of resurrection. Perhaps it was theological imagery layered over a much grimmer historical reality. The archaeobotanical evidence from beneath the Church of the Holy Sepulchre has answered that debate. Archaeologists digging beneath the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem have unearthed findings that provide strong evidence for a significant detail of the New Testament: the presence of a garden near the site of the crucifixion and burial of Jesus Christ. The discovery gives strong verification of John 19 verse 41. The excavation team found remains of olive trees and grapevines that are approximately 2,000 years old. These plant remnants, seeds and pollen, were discovered through archaeobotanical analysis performed on soil samples extracted from beneath the stone floor of the church. The garden was real, not symbolic, not an artistic flourish. A real landscape, with real trees, real vines, real soil, sitting in exactly the place the text described, at exactly the right period in history. Findings in soil samples, dating back to pre-Christian times, indicate that the area went from being a quarry, at the latest in the 1st century BC, to agricultural land, before finally becoming a burial site. This sequence, quarry, then garden, then tombs, is not the sequence one would invent. It is the kind of layered, unglamorous history that only the earth itself can reveal. And it matches, step by step, the account that John recorded 2,000 years ago. It also matches something deeper about ancient Jewish burial customs. The Gospels consistently emphasize that Jesus was crucified and buried outside the walls of Jerusalem. This was not incidental detail. Jewish law required executions to take place outside the city in order to maintain Jerusalem's ritual purity. Cemeteries, too, were kept outside the city walls. The presence of a garden and rock-cut tombs in this precise location, outside the ancient city boundaries, directly confirms the geographic logic of the Gospel accounts. Professor Stasala's team, working slowly in small sections and carefully documenting their findings, discovered that the layers beneath the building reveal a long and complex past. Part of the archaeological history includes remnants of an Iron Age quarry dating back to 1200 to 586 BC. The quarry was later repurposed for agricultural use, with low stone walls and filled in dirt demonstrating this transition to cultivated fields. And beneath those cultivated fields, the researchers also found additional rock-cut tombs, some of the oldest in the area, their silent presence confirming that this was a genuine burial ground, not simply a church tradition invented long after the fact. Let us take a step back and look at what has been established through genuine archaeological inquiry at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, not through faith alone, but through mortar dating, soil sampling, archaeobotany, ground-penetrating radar, and careful excavation by credentialed scientists from major universities. First, the site was genuinely outside the ancient city walls during the 1st century AD. Professor Stasala explained that during Jesus' time, this site was located outside the city walls. However, by the 2nd century, under Emperor Hadrian, the area became part of Roman Jerusalem, known as Aelia Capitolina, with a temple to Venus built over it. The city grew and eventually absorbed the site, but at the time of the crucifixion, this location was outside the walls. Exactly as the Gospels say. Second, the area contains genuine rock-cut tombs consistent with 1st century Jewish burial practices. In addition to the botanical and geological findings, researchers uncovered marble tombs on the church compound that appear to be connected to Joseph of Arimathea, the biblical figure believed to have provided the burial plot for Jesus. Professor Stasala said she planned to test the marble tombs further to gain additional information. These are not vague impressions in rock. They are intricately carved burial spaces consistent with the kind of tomb a wealthy individual of the period would have provided. Third, the original limestone burial bed survives. Scientific tests confirmed that the remains of a limestone cave enshrined within the church are indeed remnants of the tomb located by the ancient Romans. Mortar sampled from between the original limestone surface of the tomb and a marble slab that covers it has been dated to around AD 345. That dating places the earliest veneration of this specific site within just a few centuries of the crucifixion, long before any medieval fabrication could have occurred. Fourth, a genuine ancient garden existed here, confirmed through physical organic remains. Seeds and pollen were discovered through archaeobotanical analysis on soil samples taken from beneath the stone floor of the church. The remains suggest that the area dates back to the pre-Christian era, though radiocarbon testing is still pending. Even as testing continues, the stratigraphic context alone places this garden in exactly the right era. Fifth, the site's evolution from quarry to garden to cemetery followed a historically coherent and natural progression. This is not a sequence designed to fit a narrative. It is a sequence that emerged from the ground through systematic excavation, a sequence that happens to match, detail by detail, what the Gospels recorded. Sixth, Hadrian's deliberate attempt to bury the site may have inadvertently preserved it. After the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, Emperor Hadrian ordered the reconstruction of the city, including the Golgotha area. To curb the growing Christian cult, he had a temple dedicated to Venus built there. By burying the site under layers of Roman construction, he sealed the garden and the tomb beneath protective stone, a remarkable irony of history. The act of suppression became an act of preservation. Taken together, these 6 points do not constitute proof in the absolute sense that science demands for its highest claims. But they constitute something arguably more important, a convergence of independent evidence from multiple disciplines, all pointing in the same direction. It would be easy to frame what has been found beneath the Church of the Holy Sepulchre as a religious story, a confirmation of Christian belief, a reassurance for the faithful. And for millions of believers around the world, that is exactly what it is. But the significance of these discoveries stretches far beyond any single tradition. What archaeology has done in Jerusalem is demonstrate something that ancient historians understood, but that modern skepticism often resists, that religious texts can preserve genuine historical memory. The Gospel of John's mention of a garden was not invented in a Roman writing room centuries after the fact. It was a detail known to someone who knew Jerusalem in the first century, someone who knew what the landscape around Golgotha actually looked like. The ground beneath one of the most visited buildings in the world still has secrets to reveal, and sometimes the most important discoveries are not gold or jewels but ordinary soil that once grew olive trees. That sentence captures something essential about what makes these findings so quietly extraordinary. There is no treasure here in the conventional sense. No golden artifacts. No inscriptions naming names. Just soil and seeds, and the patient science of people willing to dig slowly and carefully and honestly in one of the most complicated places on earth. The excavations at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre are ongoing, with new discoveries potentially still to emerge as the work continues. The teams from Sapienza University are using 3D mapping and ground-penetrating radar to reconstruct the entire site digitally, allowing researchers to see what the landscape of Golgotha would have looked like in the first century. Quarry walls, garden terraces, rock-cut tombs, and all. A circular marble base was also found beneath the edicule, the sanctuary surrounding the tomb. This could have belonged to the original church of Constantine, as attested by ancient sources from the 5th and 6th centuries. Scientific investigations have now provided tangible evidence for this hypothesis. Every layer uncovered adds another dimension to what was once considered mere tradition. For scholars and skeptics, the invitation is simple: follow the evidence. Not every detail of the Gospel accounts can be confirmed by a trowel and a soil sample. But enough has been confirmed that dismissing these texts as pure mythology becomes increasingly difficult to justify. The garden was there. The tombs were there. The location was outside the city walls. The limestone burial surface has survived. And as Dan Bahat, the former city archaeologist of Jerusalem, once observed, "We may not be absolutely certain that the site of the Holy Sepulchre Church is the site of Jesus' burial, but we certainly have no other site that can lay a claim nearly as weighty, and we really have no reason to reject the authenticity of the site."